When I was growing up, American football dominated about half of every family gathering I attended. We'd all eat dinner, kids play in the yard, but eventually everybody have to come gather around the couch to watch the game. And I hated this. Football was boring, it was repetitive, and when adults were paying attention to it, they couldn't pay attention to me! I got older and began to enjoy the game more and more. I learned the rules mostly through osmosis. I learned to appreciate the brilliance of a good play, but as an adult, I never, kept up with football. I never sat down to watch an entire, 3-hour game. The commercials are so obnoxious. But even as an adult, there was one game that I had to tune in and watch. There was one game that was so hyped, that was so anticipated that I went over to a friend's house and sat down for Super Bowl 51. Super Bowl 51 was a brilliant game that featured incredibly advanced play, but that wasn't the draw. I and millions of other Americans were tuning in for the storyline. On one hand, you had the Atlanta Falcons, my state's team, which hadn't won a Super Bowl in my lifetime. On the other hand, you have Tom Brady leading the New England Patriots to break records. Both sides had so much to prove and so much to fight for, and so much of the country rooting for them. Folks are into sports for a whole host of reasons. For some, it's about tradition. Others, it's about identity. For some, it's about a place to belong. Some kind of live vicariously through their favorite players, and others just enjoy watching them because they're fun to watch. But for me, sports are most entertaining as a vehicle for narrative. If you're like me and you watch a lot of dramatic TV, read thriller novels, or fast-paced manga, the plotting, repetitive, rote nature of sports might be confusing to you as entertainment. I mean, they're just doing the same thing over and over, right? But I want to convince you that sports in real life can be incredibly gripping vessels for narrative storytelling. And I want to do that by telling you the story of a single tournament played on a single weekend in the only sport that I pay any attention to, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Okay, Melee dropped in 2001 and has hosted a vibrant international competitive scene for about 18 years now. The game has been played so long that its top players have reached a level of skill and developed the metagame to frankly ridiculous heights. I mean, look at this. Look at this. Look at this! Matches last up to 8 minutes on one of 26 stages. Players can pick one out of 26 characters, and they all start with 4 lives, or stocks. You defeat your opponent by eliminating their lives, doing so by launching them off stage. Every time you hit your opponent, their percent goes up, which makes them easier to launch and thus kill. What this system means in a practical sense is that you can have stocks eliminated incredibly quickly, leading to some games that are only 1 or 2 minutes long. But then you can also have situations where a person can hang on to a stock for an absurd amount of time, leading to a heroic comeback. And this combines the fast-paced engine of Melee to create incredibly spectacular games that are very entertaining to watch. Alright, so quick rundown. In this video, I'm going to mention the names of some characters. This is Jigglypuff. She floats around the stage and then quickly eliminates foes. Fox and Falco are both very fast and very similar to each other. Captain Falcon, yes, there is a character named Captain Falcon and a character named Falco. Yes, I hate it. It's terrible. It's bad. We're over it. We're over it. Okay, moving on. Captain Falcon also moves very fast, but focuses on heavy combos and risky gameplay. Marth is a character with a sword and uses that sword to space around his opponents and really control the stage. Does a lot of grabs and combos. Those are the main characters we're going to discuss in this video. If you watch high-level play, you'll also see Sheik, Peach, Ice Climbers, Samus, Pikachu, Yoshi, maybe a few others. Also, this video is for folks who don't know a lot about Smash, so I'm going to simplify some things, and maybe fudge the... I'm gonna make it make sense, okay? So if there's any veterans out there hardcore smashers or fans, give me some grace, I'm trying to evangelize. Our story is that of Smash Summit 10, which took place on November the 19th through the 22nd of 2020. Smash Summit is a beloved community event in Smash. It happens twice a year, and it's a purely invitational tournament where competitors are put through a series of competitive and a little more casual brackets interspersed with entertaining variety segments designed to show off the personality of the competitors attending. It's very entertaining because the whole time, the competitors, the crew, and the announcers are all milling about the same house in which the event takes place in. Smash Summit 10 had to be online this year. Almost every tournament had to be online this year because the plague, COVID-19, threw a particularly harsh works into Smash Melee, which was on track to have a banner year, and you had so many tournaments having to be canceled, stranded. People can't really congregate in a close packed setting from all over the world. That's not gonna happen. So what we have is we have the best players in the world all trapped at home with no way to host tournaments. Except the Melee community is insanely resourceful, and there's been a way to play Melee emulated and online since 2016. But June 2020 brought an even more miraculous development when now legendary programmer Fizzy introduced Slippy, which was a way to play Melee online with rollback netcode. Probably lost a few of you there. Alright, to radically oversimplify, rollback netcode is a system that essentially allows for spotty online connections to be more viable. It doesn't make your connection better, but it allows the system to do more with less. I'm putting a video in the description that explains it better, but essentially now with rollback netcode, two players on the same continent could have events, could play a match where it kind of looked like they were local on CRT, and that's incredible. For a lot of people, that meant, hey, we could use this to host tournaments again, to get a competitive season going again. Melee is a small game with small money, and many of its top competitors could never afford to play full-time or professionally. But now with far more time on their hands, many of the game's players in its top 50, top 20 could grind the game with other people on the same continent of them. Many of these people were forged in the fires of online tournaments or were professional streamers, and this allowed them to rocket up the competitive ladder. But for others, the still sometimes spotty and different setting of online Melee made it a challenge. And what this led to was a year of massive competitive upsets and new storylines. And all of this sort of swirled around to Smash Summit 10 online, which was the penultimate tournament of 2020. At Smash Summit, we would see many of these storylines that have been going on all year develop into epic sagas and play out over a brutal tournament with the best in the continent. Okay, so we have on our hands a 20-man tournament. 16 qualified through the Slippy Champions League, which was a weekly series of tournaments where you had to constantly fight to maintain your position. 3 more qualified through a last chance bracket, and 1 slot was reserved for an invitation of the hosts, who could hypothetically pick anyone. Those 20 players were placed into 4 pools of 5 people, where everyone would fight everyone else in their pool. Pools are really interesting, but the stakes were far from high, as only those who went 0-4 were ejected from their pool. Those who went 4-0 or 3-1 were placed into the winner's bracket of the tournament, whereas the other 8 were seeded into losers. Still, pools served up plenty of fascinating matches and results, the most interesting one to me being a disappointing 0-4 by Plup. And that's so surprising because Plup is a legendary smasher. I mean, the man is a god slayer! I should probably explain that. So roughly 2011 through 2016 was a time in Melee known as the Era of the Five Gods, where almost every major tournament in North America and Europe was won by one of five people, who almost never lost a match to anyone except each other. While the five gods were never truly equal to each other, a competition between the two of them was far from surefire in its outcome, and they were so far ahead of everyone else in the game that it was kind of laughable. The five gods reigned over Melee's return to wider prominence, and that era is kind of seen as a golden age of the game, with thousands of storylines taking place in the five-way rivalry between the men. The gods were so far above other players that taking a set off of one of them was cause for alarm, but in their day, only two men ever defeated all five in tournament, and Plup was the second and final person to ever do that, and it helped usher in a new era of the game, an era where Plup would often be at the forefront, winning massive tournaments and dominating the competitive scene with his characters like Fox, Samus, Sheik, and even Luigi. There are so many epic stories about Plup. Like this one time, okay, I'm getting a bit off topic. Anyway, the point is, the guy's been in the top 10 for the past 5 years, and to see him wash out so early is a testament. We are in a new era of Melee, folks. Along with Axe, man, what a letdown to see a man who was ranked 4th or 3rd in the world in 2019. A man who redefined the tier list, who won a tournament with Pikachu for the first time ever. To see him wash out in the first round of bracket, it was incredibly disappointing, because he's just like a cool guy. But the reverse of an 0-4 is a 4-0, and 4 men came out of pools with that record, probably the most notable amongst them being Hungrybox. Hold on, where do I even start with Hungrybox? So, one of the original five gods that I mentioned earlier, after 2016, Hungrybox and Armada would start pulling away from the rest to optimize the game in a way that seemed to completely sometimes leave the rest of the world behind. HBox is a man of absurd accomplishment and controversy. He was ranked best in the world in 2017, 18, and 19, and I could try and convince you of his skill at the game, or I could just throw up his tournament results from the past 6 years and just let you soak it in. If your name was Juan de Biedma and you entered a tournament in 2019, you had an over 50% chance of getting first place. I mean, the guy was so controversial and so dominant that there was serious talk of banning his character in tournament for the health of the game. And one time in April, this guy threw a crab at him. Like, who does? I'm getting off topic. HBox has seen perhaps the most dramatic fall in the COVID era, putting up pathetic online results compared to his previous dominance, which was set to more or less continue into 2020. As a fan watching HBox this year, he's sometimes just demoralized and broken. It's like he's a different person, constantly losing motivation in his view, imperfect and laggy and inconsistent world of online. And it's easy to see how his rapid success in the greener pastures of streaming and content creation could mean that this titan of the game no longer is going to play the game. For much of 2020, HBox openly mused about his career, and many of his fans anticipated his retirement any day now, while many of his haters reveled in his downfall. Said haters jeered when it was announced that he would receive the invitational slot for Smash Summit 10, a tournament he did not qualify for. They claimed that he didn't deserve it. He's washed up, and one way or another, HBox went in with a lot to prove. Second match in pools, Hungrybox is up against None, a Captain Falcon player who looks aggressive, dominant, and utterly unstoppable. Dropping game 1 and almost dropping game 2, Hungrybox regained his clutch abilities, reminding us that he is both the wall and the bomb. HBox would proceed to utterly dominate his pool and be seeded into the winner's bracket of the tournament proper. I should probably explain that. The tournament is double elimination. By ejecting players who lose twice instead of who lose once, you get a far more accurate representation of who's actually better at the game than who. So, if you lose when you're in winner's bracket, you get bumped down to the loser's bracket. And if you lose in the loser's bracket, then you're out of the game. At the end of the tournament, there will be two people in grand finals, one coming from the winner's bracket and one from the loser's bracket. And if the loser's bracket guy is going to win, they have to win 2 sets in a row, because remember, it's double elimination and the guy in winners has to be eliminated twice. Now, HBox will be run over by IBDW in winners, go on to beat Spark convincingly, and then lose a last-hit slugfest against Ginger to be eliminated in 7th place. It would be a disappointing result for 2019, but this for a 2020 HBox showed that the guy's still got it. And as a fan, I'm really looking forward to him returning to his former glory. It's always great to watch a person you've been a longtime fan of in one of these tournaments, but you also get to pick up an interest in someone who you've never heard of before. For instance, this was the first time that I really gotten to see MLG in action. And for one, it's just super refreshing to see a woman at the top level of the game, but also, holy shit, that Falco, oh my god, how do you even do that? It's an incredibly entertaining execution of the character, but if we are here to be entertained, I cannot highlight any set of this tournament other than Ginger versus Wizrobe in losers quarterfinals. Up till now, I've discussed how matches can take place in the wider narrative of a competitor's career, but every match is a story. Every game has a rising and falling action. Players are not competitive machines. They adapt and emote as the game goes on. My father prefers watching college football to pro, and the reason he'll give for enjoying a sensibly lower level play is that college athletes have far more emotion in the game than hardened professionals. This emotional variability allows the audience to see the difference between players who crack under pressure, those who get sloppy when the tide turns their way, and those who are able to bring it back from a deficit. Ginger is another one of those great players in the top 50 who was always incredibly dangerous as a contender, but never got really the spotlight before the COVID era. He showed up to Smash Summit 10 looking like the main character of my life. Like, that is a setup right there. Side note, it's hella fun to get like a little glimpse into these competitors' lives through the stream cam. Like, a lot of times it's just their streamer setups, but you do get to see glimpses of their personality, like Zane's immaculate rap taste. You got Lucky's bomb-ass crib. I'm pretty sure that's like Red Bull in Nun's mini fridge. You've got Spark and Face Roll, keeping it keeping it tasteful by the window. You've got SFAT hanging out with this weird chair, and then you have Majai, who's just in a room with her computer, a charger, a mirror, and a board. I don't know why that's funny. So Ginger's repping Falco, and he's still hungry for his first big tournament win. He's up against Wizrobe, a Captain Falcon player with near inhuman tech skill who has been just as dominant in 2020 as he was in the years before, when he rocketed to the top and won the first major tournament for Captain Falcon in like 14 years. Wizrobe is known for his punishing combos, which were on full display in games 1 and 2 of this match, as Wizrobe drove Ginger from one end of the stage to the other. It seemed like every time Wizzy got Ginger off stage, it ended with a kill. Clean, efficient play that left no room for comeback. It looked like it was going to be a wipeout, but then Ginger rallied in Game 3 and was able to land a point on the board. In Game 4, Ginger turned on this aggressive, just salvo of attacks, and Wizrobe starts to falter. You have this man who is known for his proficient play, missing techs and hanging back on edge guards. He's doubting himself. Game 5 saw more of the same. This is Ginger's time to shine as he turns on this blistering salvo of combos that Wizzy could barely keep up with. Wizrobe finds himself, despite his best efforts, on his last stock with a major deficit. Where other players would have cracked, Wizrobe digs deep. He slips out of Ginger's offense and evens it up. For a while, both players are dancing around each other, neither one of them able to end a hit until Wizrobe wins a single combo and ends the game out of nowhere, and we do nothing else but to just scream in hype with Wizrobe's pop-off. No cap, that match was so hype when I first saw it, it temporarily gave me cerebral palsy. Wizrobe would continue to rep the Captain Falcon name to greatness in this tournament. This tournament was a really good showing for Captain Falcon with its holy trinity of players, Wizrobe, Nun, and S2J, all seeded into the winner's bracket. S2J has been a fan favorite for half a decade now with his sick play and adorable pop-offs. I've already told you about Nun's incredible style, but I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I could get lost in his chocolate eyes. That's important for you to know. Nun is the only player who I've seen look dominant even when he's losing. And he did lose to IBDW in that other losers quarterfinals match. IBDW is a player of one of the game's most meteoric rises behind him, going from 84th to 34th to 9th in the world over the course of 3 years. The man is insane with Fox. Just gotten there through constant grinding and adaptation. He used to be known for his weakness in the Captain Falcon matchup, including a humiliating loss to Nun in Super Smash Con 2019. But in this tournament, he would prove that he is over that, and he would go on to beat Nun and slay Wizzy himself, which was actually a rematch from Pools, where he lost. In the rematch, IBDW was able to weave through Wizzy's combos with immaculate spacing. Look at this clip and watch how the Fox just barely stays out of the Falcon's range before punishing him. You can find plenty of mind-blowing combos to IBDW's name, just like any super fast Fox player, but I want to highlight how once he gets his opponent off stage, he doesn't overextend. Instead, patiently waits for them to get back on, and then punishes again. He doesn't leave room for error. That is the strength of IBW. It's his patience and his discipline. This mental game and patience allows him to make comebacks even when he's down, as he did in his first game against HBox in winner's bracket. It was in the second game against HBox that a commentator compared IBW to a player whose name I don't think was mentioned for the rest of the tournament. He compared him to Armada. Armada is perhaps the most dangerous man to ever touch a GameCube controller. The Swedish sniper was known for his immaculate punish game, ending a stock off a single mistake while staying clean and overwhelming. This man was a perfect blend of flash and discipline before his retirement in 2018, and let me tell you, when he was at his height, it was like he was off track again. Basically what I'm telling you is that IBDW can inherit Armada's legacy of practice and patience and being utterly devastating. I would not be surprised to see him top the competition in 2021 or 2020. IBDW would find his chosen run ended by a man who has ended perhaps more brilliant runs than anyone else in the game, Mango. Mango is perhaps the most entertaining man to shine in competitive Melee. I don't really know what I want to tell you about more. His dominance over the game of the last 13 years, or his antics and humor that you just can't help but love. Mango spent years as Melee's top player, and after a slight decline, he has surged back into relevance in 2020, looking as dominant that year as he looked in 2009, and 2010, and 11, and 13, and 14, and it's hard to describe Mango's playstyle without showing it to you, but no one seems to understand combos the way he does. But when Mango tempers his constant experimentation with a little bit of discipline, it looks like no one in the game is able to beat him. Well, nobody except for Zane, of course. There is no player that more defined Melee 2020's competitive scene than Zane Nagmi. He opened the year defeating the game's top player at one of its biggest tournaments. And once the Rona hit, he reminded us that he was forged in the fires of online, taking down tournament after tournament, sometimes even with the character Roy, which is generally considered to be one of the worst in the game. It was these results that made Zayn the most feared threat of the year. Many put him in a tier all by himself, or in a tier with Mango, depending on who you ask. And the two men would just battle throughout the entire saga. You know, Zayn versus Mango is perhaps the most brutal matchup right now. My favorite match of Melee ever is their set at the Big House 9. What a... Whew. It's just so high level technical play. Both men just not giving any ground and punching after a single weakness. But Smash Summit 10 was Zayn's tournament. Mango, the kid, the GOAT, the man who walked up slowly, would be beaten twice by Zayn, who would stand atop Smash Summit 10 looking like he ruled the world wondering who could possibly take him down. That was the final narrative. Or at least it was the final narrative 4 months ago. A few weeks later, Zayn would be eliminated from LACS 3 at 6th place after 2 last-hit matches against S2J and Axe. For S2J, it was a nice feather in his cap to set him aside from other Falcons, and for Axe, it was a reminder that he's still a killer, and you still best put respect in his name. I'm sorry, I love Axe, the guy's just moe as fuck, I can't stand it. A few weeks after that, Hungrybox would win his first tournament in 10 months. It could be that something massive has happened in between me recording this video and it coming out. Because that's the narrative power of sports. You can jump in anytime at any tournament with no knowledge of the history and find a line to follow. But the history, how many times during this video did I get sidetracked to a completely different story because of how much history there is in Smash? This is a 20-year game. It's 20 years of players innovating and competing, of rivalries, of dramas, triumphs, and failures. All of these stories forming this vast interconnected web, a grand tapestry of narrative. Shoutouts to Ghost Lightning. In this video, I never mentioned Mango's controversial legacy, the hole that Armada's departure has left on the game, Leffen's conflicted redemption. I never mentioned other fascinating players like Lod or Rishi or Amsa. I didn't mention that in 2006 there was a player who played Roy who was one of the best in the United States. I didn't mention that there's this guy named Hanky Panky who only goes to tournaments in Ohio and has one of the best win-loss records of all time. I didn't mention that at one point 2 men sat down to play a match in which they did not touch their controllers for 8 minutes while a crowd, I can't use my words, a crowd gathered to scream and hype over what was going on. Because I tried to keep this video scoped to a single tournament that needed a decade of context to understand it and set off stories that were iterated on in the months afterwards. You can lose yourself in this well of content, humanity, personality, and lore. But what if you're not into Smash? What if you find the competitive scene off-putting? What if you don't like the low poly graphics, the gameplay? That's fine. Because my point is, you can do this with any sport on the planet. Maybe it's a sport you played in high school, or a game you play for fun with your friends. Maybe it's a hobby or interest that you just think is exciting and cool. I promise, in any sport or game, you will find lore, controversy, tragedy, and highs like you never believe. Frankly, as a novelist, it is annoying that reality can craft storylines and narratives often better than I can. So if you've always seen the entertainment of sports as brain dead or archaic, I'm begging you, give it a try. Or you could just watch competitive wrestling. In the comments, let me know your favorite story from a sport that you follow. I'm Wyatt the Word Weaver. That's my Twitter. Subscribe to give me dopamine. Share the video. I would really appreciate that. I'm going to get in the next one. And y'all be good.